Hello, everyone. My name is Rhonda Allison. I'm a diamond leader in Trinidad, and we are here today to share some information with you. Renee McLaughlin, my beautiful friend, that has a master's degree in natural health. Renee has spent 30 years working with people with their health, with exercise, training, coaching, teaching, and she has a particular area that she has really honed in on with blood sugar balance, and it really fits really well in with what we do in our new product called Transform. So Renee, as we kind of move down this path a little bit with this amazing, wonderful product, a lot of people have had different results, different. Somebody says, oh, I've lost one so-and-so in 3 days. And somebody else said, oh, haven't lost any weight at all in a week. We've got different stories coming in, and maybe different, of course, personalities and lives. And, you look at yourself and think, oh, why it's not working for me and it's working for the next person. So I know there's reasons why. And I thought maybe you might be able to address some of that with us today.
Thanks, Rhonda. Well, I'm really excited actually about this particular live that we're doing because, we all kind of have our own story, do we not, about our own bodies, where we're at. And most likely, if you're listening to this and you're looking at either starting the Transform, the sugar to fiber enzyme, or you've been on it and you're seeing all these different results, and maybe you're not getting the same quickness or speed of result that you were hoping for or that you see other people. And then the question always is, how come? Like, are those ladies lying? They're not lying, just letting you know. Because we're all at our own different places metabolically. Now, if you know already that you have been trying to lose weight and I've tried everything and nothing is working, especially if you're maybe going through certain hormonal periods like perimenopause, menopause, etc., that makes it even more challenging. Oh my gosh, it can just be so frustrating, right? You just feel like your body is betraying you and you don't know who to listen to or where to turn. And it's just crazy making. So I really wanted to come on and let's just do a little bit of education around what actually is happening to us metabolically so that we can start maybe putting our own little puzzle pieces together and help ourselves through this journey is just what I'm going to call it. So I like to just call it metabolic dysfunction. If you're having trouble, you're doing everything you think that you should or what used to work but is not working now, let's talk about metabolic dysfunction. And so to do that, I thought it would be really fun to bring on a couple of people who are experts in this particular area. And I just love it. Ron, isn't it fun whenever you're kind of like, gee, I really want to help people and I really want to give some education. And then you turn on something and the exact perfect thing shows up, right? I love that. So that's what happened, right? I was kind of, on YouTube and I went, let me go listen to this podcast by somebody that I happen to find to be a really good expert. His name is Dr. David Perlmutter. And you guys might have heard of him. If you haven't, you might at least have heard of some of the New York Times best-selling books that he's written over the past. He's written a lot of books. Probably his most famous one is The Grain Brain. He is a MD, and he is very much into metabolic processing, and he's a neurologist. And that's why he wrote The Grain Brain, because he found that specifically gluten can be very, very detrimental, especially to children's brains and to our brain. Does a lot of work around children and brains and raising smart children. So moms, if you have that situation with your kids, get the Grain Brain and some of Dr. Perlmutter's work. Now, in this particular these two interviews, he's interviewing Dr. Benjamin Bikman. And Dr. Bikman has a PhD in something called bioenergetics. And that really means our body's bio, how we create energy. or metabolism. And Dr. Bikman is also a research scientist and a professor at Brigham Young right now. And this is his whole area of research. So let's bring the two gentlemen on at first.
Study metabolic. How does it start? Firstly, let me just provide my own very brief definition of what insulin resistance is. And I will invoke this, a metaphor of a coin, that imagine this coin that I'm holding is insulin resistance. On one side of the coin is the phenomenon that you just described, which is insulin isn't working as well as it used to. At some cells, I will add that as a provision here. So some of the cells of the body, indeed big ones and dominant ones like muscle cells and fat cells, aren't responding to insulin as well as they used to. Now, however, some cells are responding well to insulin, and that becomes a problem when we flip the coin over, because the other side of the coin that we call insulin resistance is an obligatory hyperinsulinemia, or chronically elevated insulin. And that's a good place to start, because of the handful of causes of insulin resistance, I firmly believe that chronically elevated insulin is the most relevant of the causes. In other words, if a person is living a lifestyle which is chronically keeping their insulin at an elevated state, they become progressively more and more resistant to that insulin. At least some of the cells of the body do. And this then is the insulin resistance in that coin metaphor. So chronically elevated insulin is a key cause. Now, of course, as the body becomes more resistant to insulin, it needs more insulin in order to get the same signal that once upon a time was realized with a more modest amount of insulin. And thus, we start to see this very vicious cycle where, yes, on one hand, too much insulin is driving insulin resistance, but a failure of the body to respond to the insulin is in turn promoting a greater need for insulin. And so we end up with this scenario in which hyperinsulinemia is both cause and consequence of insulin resistance.
Hey, back just a little bit. You said if people are living a life that's causing chronically their insulin levels to be higher, what do people do that's causing their insulin levels to be chronically higher than they should be?
Right. It becomes obvious when we consider the insulin effect of the three macronutrients within the human diet. So the macronutrients, and your audience knows this, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. If a person eats pure fat, there is no insulin spike at all. The body, the beta cells of the pancreas don't respond to dietary fat. When someone eats pure protein, there can be a modest effect, but it sort of depends on the individual. For example, type 2 diabetics may have a higher response to protein than a non-diabetic. In fact, most certainly does. But generally, it's little to no effect. When someone eats pure carbohydrate, there is a substantial effect, where even in an insulin-sensitive person, insulin will easily spike 10 times over normal, over fasting levels, and take up to 3 hours before it comes back down to normal.
And that's a normal, good response, insulin doing what exactly it's supposed to do.
That is a response in an insulin-sensitive person. Now, if we were to look at that same response to pure carbohydrate in an insulin-resistant person, it could go up twice as high as that, so up to 20 times higher than normal, and stay elevated for up to 5 hours. Now,
in an attempt to bring down the blood sugar.
That's right. Insulin's just having to work so much harder and stick around so much longer in order to correct the blood sugar, all the while creating havoc throughout the body at the liver cells or the gonads, the ovaries in women or the blood vessels, creating metabolic havoc in the meantime. Now, that phenomenon, that response to carbohydrate, is relevant in and of itself, but it becomes doubly relevant when we look at it through the lens of what the average person is doing. So an uncommon person will eat only 3 meals a day and be insulin sensitive. And so if they eat 3 meals a day with about 4 hours in between each meal, there has probably been some period of time, about an hour or so, before the next meal when insulin has been able to come back down to fasting conditions. So they have most of their day is spent with normal insulin, or at least a decent part of it, of their waking day, a decent part of it. Now, however, when we consider two things, it becomes problematic. Well, three, actually. One, which is that most people don't eat 3 times a day. Most people eat 6 times a day or so. They will have 3 big meals and then 3 snacks in between. That we call it a snack, but it might actually be as big as the meal itself was, particularly into the evening when most people really start to indulge. And second, most people are eating primarily carbohydrate. Globally, about 70% of all calories consumed are carbohydrates. So we're eating not only most of the greatest insulin spiking macronutrient, but we're eating them every hour and a half or so. So insulin never has time to come down. But the third aspect to this that's still relevant is that the average person is in fact insulin resistant. And so there is not even a hint of moment where in every waking moment, insulin levels are elevated. I'll say it that way. So the average individual is living a life where every waking moment is spent with elevated insulin, and frankly, depending on their metabolic health and when they eat in the evening, this may be even spilling into several hours of their non-waking moments. And this is why I believe firmly that we need to, of all the various noxious stimuli that can contribute to insulin resistance, and there are others, and I believe they are relevant, but the most relevant is just give your body a break from the hyperinsulinemia. Give it a chance to have insulin come down, and now you can resensitize the body, and your risk of all of these chronic diseases goes away, if not the disease itself disappearing.
And there you have it. So insulin resistance, as he said, worldwide over 70%. I believe it's really, really high here. So if you're somebody, again, that's saying, Renee, I don't have blood sugar issues, but I can't lose weight. Well, somewhere you have some kind of a metabolic issue. You just do, or you wouldn't be having difficulty, right? So taking a look at that, but it's not always diagnosed. You might not go to the doctor and have a fasting glucose, and they might say your glucose is fine, but what is happening to your insulin levels? And that's really what we're looking at. So some people might be able to, they're eating too much or whatever, not an issue. We go on something like the Transform and we're automatically bringing it back, but maybe they just don't have a lot of insulin resistance. Then for whatever reason, they're able to lose quicker, right? But if you do, it might just take you a little bit longer to begin to sensitize your cells in order to start to allow those cells to open to let the insulin in, etc. So that when you're able to do that and get that metabolic shift, and now the body's no longer simply always trying to just burn glucose, you're now able to tap into your body's own storage form of energy, which are the fat cells. And that's when you start to see some shrinkage of the fat cells. And that's when you know that you're actually healing from the inside.
Renee, I think that, if you're going to go to the expense of buying a product that you want to get results from, that discipline of taking it, let's just say it takes a little discipline to take it correctly. You have to take it correctly and in a timely manner. If you're going to go to that expense and that discipline to do that, it's also from what he said, valuable to have some discipline on what you're putting in your mouth a day. So, it can't be a green light for every single thing you want to eat just because you got this product. And I think that's really interesting that he said that most of 70% of the calories are usually from carbs.
Mm-hmm. And you know what, guys, that can also be healthy carbs, right? That's what we want. We want the healthy carbs. But it's still, carbs are still carbs. So you still want to, maybe just take a look at making sure, even if it's a vegan or vegetarian, it's like you want to really increase your protein. That makes a difference. Maybe reducing a little bit of some of those starchy carbs. But again, this is where that Transform is so helpful. It's a tool to start to allow us to drop down, right, the carbohydrates and allow some of that insulin spike to modulate. I'll just call it to modulate a little bit, and then begin to allow our cells to heal metabolically is really big. And then also, to do the other things, if you're really looking to lose weight and to really work on this idea of how do you create more insulin sensitivity, there are other lifestyle things that go along with it. Now, from a Trinot company standpoint, noticing, Trinot's not giving us a diet to follow. Right? But that's not what this is about. That's something that you'll need to really discover for yourself. And that's not what we're doing here. Just giving you information, though, about how to begin to heal your cells. We know that movement is ultra, ultra important for longevity and for helping those cells start to become more sensitive. And guess what else? I will also say this, especially as women and as we get older, because that's kind of where I'm at, and Rhonda and I are both sort of in that same situation. I always tell women we become more insulin resistant. That's why all of a sudden I'm not doing anything different and I'm getting bigger, because we're becoming more insulin resistant. We talked about that, and more sensitive to stress. And so we really need to find some good stress management tools that we can put on, not just talk about. Just talking about it doesn't do it. You really need to find some good things. It's one of the things why I go out and I walk all the time. Yeah, I'm doing it to move my body, but you know what? When I can get away from the computer and everything and just get outside, man, all of a sudden everything just shifts and I can just feel everything drain. That's one of the ways that I do it. So anyway, we can always discuss more of those kinds of things. But I think that this hopefully will give people just a good base understanding so that you can then go off and do your own research on it.
So basically what we're saying, like in conjunction with the transform, that this is basically a tool to allow us to move a little further, faster down, even as we're making good food choices and we're trying to lower our stress levels, we're trying to get good sleep, that the transform would just be a tool to help us get down the road a little faster with our results, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I know because I've done all these things for so long that I really don't have a high amount of insulin resistance. I've always been sensitive to carbohydrates. That's just my physiology, my genetics. I know that, which is why I've been fairly low carb. And believe me, doesn't mean I don't eat carbs. Okay. It's just on the lower, non-starchy kind of thing. But yet I went on it and I have shared my less than 1 month. And I really got rid of just that extra fluff. Now, I'm not real insulin resistant, and still it's a beautiful tool and it's really working for me. And so I just think it's just a great blood sugar management tool to really help us. It's a tool.
Renee, we didn't talk about talking about this, but he mentioned something that made me think about this. He said something about giving your body a break, I guess, from carbs, and to give your body some healing time, I guess, away from, all the activity that happens when you eat anything. So what is your opinion? Do you recommend, and we didn't talk about this, but what is your opinion on intermittent fasting? Let's just say in the morning, because I usually have my Mojo in the morning, and then I might have a Zest around 11:30, and I might go ahead and take my Transformed in, and I might not eat till about 12:30 or 1 or maybe 1:30, and I'm really just not hungry. Is that a healthy direction? Is that a good thing to do?
Well, there's been a lot of studies about intermittent fasting and showing the absolute longevity benefit for the autophagy and healing and cleaning up the cells, etc. So we know that in general, that's a good idea. And also for insulin resistance, it starts to help our cells become more sensitive to the insulin. I'm now, again, this is just my unofficial, because as you asked my opinion, I'm going to give it. I think it's really helpful for a lot of people. I don't think it's always the best, especially for some of us women, because it can be a stressor. when you don't eat for a certain period of time, and that can create more stress. So again, I think this is, we have to play with it ourselves, right? I find sometimes I don't want to eat. I'm not hungry until about 11. And I will tell you, if Rhonda's doing her mojo and her zest, I'd be flying, man. Woo! I don't know that I could do both of those, all that on an empty stomach. And this is what I mean. This is why there is no one way to do it. We've got to experiment with it. I am loving that zest, though. I got to tell you, I haven't gotten the mojo yet. Hopefully it's being shipped this week. But I love the zest. I do it hot because I like hot things. And even that, I wait until probably, for me, maybe to about 9 or 10. And you're right, it will keep you from being hungry. It does for me. Mm-hmm. And then I'll take a transform. And then I don't typically eat anything probably until about 11 or 12. But you know what, you guys, sometimes I get up and I'm hungry. I mean, some days I'm just hungry when I get up. So I might eat something. I might take a transform and wait an hour and do it. So, I think we just have to really pay attention to our body and really listen to what it's telling us. And I know that's something that so many of us, we're not used to listening.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We're just not. So
right. That's for
another
sure.
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Renee. Thank you so much for sharing some of your expertise and your ideas. And, you've spent a long time working with people in this area. And it's really, I love hearing your knowledge. It really helps me to know how my body works better and not worry so much if it's the product's problem or my problem or, it's definitely a metabolic issue. And I do think that having patience, or especially if we've got habits, right? Maybe we've got habits of eating a big snack before we go to bed, or, some of those habits that we've ingrained. I think that bringing in some discipline along with the product, like I said earlier, is super important if you want to have the results you're looking for.
Right. You're so right. Our eating is so habitual. It just is. And that's the challenge. That's a huge challenge in weight management, are just the habits that we've gotten into. And so, discipline. And I'm just going to throw out one other word to kind of wrap this up, and that's mindfulness. Really checking in. I'm finding that I need to do this because I do have an evening, my habit. I got into a little habit of in the evening then, like having a little snack. Again, I'm not even doing sugar. I'm doing like a little protein with some nuts, but yet that's a habit. And so now I'm really, right when I go to get up, right? When it's calling my name, I have to really sit back for a minute, breathe, and check in. Am I really hungry? Do I really want that? And that's another place where I found the transform to be really helpful. Now I check in and I'm like, I'm really not. I'm good. I don't need it.
I think it's funny that because I work from home, so it's easy to go in the kitchen. That's a little bit of a problem when you work from home.
Yeah.
But since I've been taking Transform, I've really noticed that I don't have that, in the afternoon, like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, that real ravished, hungry, gotta have something. I don't feel that. I really feel this calm awareness, and I feel creative. It's just bizarre. I feel creative. I feel like my mind thinks clearer than it did if I don't take it. I feel like there's a big difference, and maybe it's because I don't have that spike in the drop. I'm not sure.
No, it is absolutely. When I hear somebody is dipping 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock, that is blood sugar, imbalance of blood sugar, without a doubt. Then kind of go back and say, well, what did I eat this morning, or didn't I? Or didn't I? See, that's the other thing too, sometimes with intermittent fasting, or didn't I? Maybe it would have been better. So now when you're at least taking the mojo or a zest, you have something in there, and then, you take the transform, which is already going to start to balance the blood sugar. So absolutely, that's what that is. And I feel the same way. I am just like so level energy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it's helping or it's working. It's
Right.
just there.
Yeah. Another thing is, if somebody asked me this question, I would say, oh, no, I don't have blood sugar balance issues. Like, I've never had that problem.
Right.
But again, here I have this middle thing going on, that I can't get rid of. And again, I could lose 10 pounds. I have lost 3. I'm super happy about that. And my mood is, everything about this product, the Transform, is making me just feel good. It gives me that forward thinking of, I can do this.
Yes.
Like, if you don't have a tool of some kind, like every single day you're like, oh, am I going to overdo it today? Or am I going to do well today? If I got, we're going to go to the beach next month, and I'm like, I got to lose this weight. And, it gives you the confidence, I think. And that's, to me, it gives me confidence that I can achieve those things that I need to achieve every day. And just knowing that I'm staying away from the chips and the salsa, if we go out to dinner with people, or, just know that I don't have the cravings. Like, if I eat some pizza, I don't have to eat 3 pieces. I can eat 2 and be just good. I don't even think much about it. It's just that thought, the non-thought really about food. You don't have to think about it too much.
Right. Until somebody balances their blood sugar, they don't get it.
Oh.
You didn't get it before. You didn't. Oh, I don't have blood sugar issues. No. That's not what it is. I just know that I'm fading in the afternoon. I want this and that. We don't equate it to that until you start to feel what it does feel like to balance the blood sugar. And then we go, oh, I had no idea. And that's when the bell rings inside and you go, oh, okay. That's what is happening. Beautifully put, actually. Yeah.
And I'm going to go get that book, The Grain Brain. Is that what it's called?
The Grain Brain.
That I've heard about that book. Yeah. But again, I didn't think I had those issues.
Exactly.
But
exactly.
It sounds really interesting. Thank you so much for introducing us to these 2 experts and being on as well. We appreciate you so much. And stay tuned for more amazing information. We'll address some more topics as we go. Thanks
Bye, guys. Thank you.